Hello and welcome to today's Glow webinar on Positive Realism by Dr. Guila Clara Kessous. Dr. Guila Clara Kessous has defended her PhD thesis under Nobel Peace Prize laureate Elie Wiesel. Dr. Kessous' expertise deals mostly with drama therapy and techniques applied to human rights violations victims. For her work with humanitarian causes, she has been nominated UNESCO Artist for Peace, especially with regards to her work as an artivist using theater to self-empowerment. A certified coach, she became Rising Talent from the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society in 2020 for her dedication in times of COVID-19 to support medical teams, nurses, and patients in remission using resilience through art of storytelling and drama techniques. Today, Dr. Kessous has inspired more than 50,000 people all around the world to find a better being thanks to her drama resilient approach, which has saved thousands of cases of depression. She's also applied these techniques to create self-leadership curriculum to give resources to Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh with the organization Library Without Borders. She's also the recipient of the Women Empowerment Award 2020 by Eva Longoria from the Global Gift Foundation and has been shortlisted as the Time magazine's 100 most influential persons of the year 2021. That's so amazing, Gila Clara. Congratulations to you. And you've been such a wonderful inspiration. And before I actually start this webinar, one of my first questions, though I had a list of questions to ask you, one of my most primary questions for you is, what has been your inspiration to do all this?
So first of all, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my passion about positive realism. So what has been my initial motivation? I think it's really the opportunity to give the chance to each and everyone to speak up and tell how unique each person is. I think my initial ambition is really based on communication, and communication that could be positive when you know how to use different rules, when you know how to preserve yourself and get connected with others in order to get the best of this relationship. So I do think, like many other people in the world, that things could be better if we can find a better way to communicate. And theater and drama is helping me a lot. Today, I will talk to you about very specific and concrete tools to get to this notion of positive realism. What you need to understand is, before all, being proud of who you are and express it in a very simple way, because you all have a unicity, a unique way to be in the world. And I will not use the word mission, because maybe mission is too much, for everybody here, but simply something unique you can bring yourself to others, because humanity needs you. I do think that this is my strong belief.
Thank you for this deep expression of your heart. And thank you for giving this opportunity to a lot of people around you, to the people of the world, to share their unique expression and to facilitate this communication. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you. And as we begin the webinar, my first question, as always, is what is positive realism? And
what is positive realism? Thank you, Purnima. That's an excellent question. Well, let's try to have a look on what I prepared for you today, dear participants. So what is positive realism? This is true. You've made a beautiful poster. You have it under your very eyes here. It says the journey through taking risk, emotional learning, mindset, motivation. This is everything I'm going to try to transmit. So get ready to know some keys in order to better your life easily. So first of all, you've done a beautiful presentation about my work here. It's not to insist on it again, but just to understand a little bit what is my area of expertise, to know what type of tools I'm going to be able to give you. So I'm a performer. I'm coming from the world of theater. You see on the top left, you have a big D and a big E. It means that in France, I have taken a state diploma to become a theater professor. So all of the work that I'm going to give you will be highly interactive and easy to access, easy to practice, because it comes from this. It comes from drama. It's come from communication, but when it's on stage. And then after doing this state diploma of performing theater arts, I decided to do an MBA, a business school, in order to produce my own shows. I was really obsessed about helping people who have been surviving traumatized life, helping people who have survived genocides, for example, to deliver their own testimony, to risk to be on stage and speak up about what happened to them. So I really worked with victims, and my MBA, the business school, helped me to do production of performances. And again, the performances were having double stake, double goal. One was to help survivors to feel better after speeding up, after getting rid of all this suffering, and also the audience to be aware about what happened. So this worked. Then I went all over the world. I went to Rwanda, I went to Congo, I went to Sarajevo, for example. So places where there were some victims, to help them better talk. It was not on stage, but it was just to help them as a coach to better speak up their trauma. And I received this UNESCO Artist for Peace prize to help people with art to better express themselves. I became a coach. You have the ICC logo here, and I taught at Harvard University for many years, class on theater and human rights. And today I'm really using theater to help people thanks to coaching. So I'm going to give you now some influences, academic influences, only because I think you need to look for them on Google. Those people will help you tremendously if you're interested about positive realism. Of course, first is a professor called Tal Ben-Shahar. We call him the professor of happiness at Harvard University. He has been the one to give the first class on positive psychology at Harvard University. He is not the creator of the positive psychology expression, but he really made that so accessible that really for us students, it was a real chance to better understand how happiness has having science basis, I would say. William Ury is the one who created the win-win negotiation in order to better talk to people, to better find strategy with obstructive behavior, such as passivity, manipulation, or aggressivity. So William Ury created the program on negotiation at Harvard Law School. And you see under the picture, you have some books in French, because those professors asked me to record with my voice their books in French. Those books, of course, exist in English if you are interested to dig in it. Happier is Tal Ben-Shahar bestseller, and Getting to Yes is the bestseller of William Ury. Last but not least, a professor that I strongly advise you to know, his name Paul Ekman. Paul Ekman is very well known for emotional intelligence. He created lately, together with the Dalai Lama, an atlas on emotions. And if you go on Google and you put Atlas of Emotion, Paul Ekman, Dalai Lama, you will see a wonderful way to approach what we are calling emotional intelligence, how to put specific words on level of emotions. And I think you will really like it. So this has been creating EIA group, which is the Emotional Intelligence Academy group. And Paul Ekman, for the little story behind the scene, is also very well known because he influenced a series, a Netflix series that is called Lie to Me. And Lie to Me is all about lying detection. And Paul Ekman's research on emotional intelligence is also including facial expressions. So we get to the level of lying detection, and I'm sure you will be very interested by this. Of course, those are academic influences, and I would like to give you real big people for me who have been wonderful influencers because of their life. They are survivors who are using positive realism to cope as a resilience tool. So those people are here. You have Elie Wiesel, who was my PhD advisor. He is a Nobel Prize of Peace. He was the first one to dare to talk about Holocaust, about the Shoah. And he wrote Night. You have the book in French that I recorded because he asked me to. I have the chance to work with him for 7 years. And he's an example of courage and of honesty in terms of thinking about realism together with optimism. Malala Yousafzai, who is also a Nobel Prize Peace, and she survived the Taliban's attack, and she decided to devote her life to girls' education. She wrote a wonderful book, I, Malala, that I had the chance to record also. And so she is, for me, also someone that I had the chance to meet and to learn from in terms of positive realism. At last, I would like to quote this wonderful survivor of the Rwanda genocide, Albert Nsengimana, whom I met and who gave me a lot of secrets that I will share with you regarding how to cope and how to resist depression, especially when a trauma happens in your family. He wrote this book, My Mother Killed Me. She was a Hutu who got married with a Tutsi, and she decided to bring all of her children to death because of this. And he survived, he succeeded to escape, he even forgave to his mother. This book is wonderful. You have it in French, but again, this is something you will find in English. So enough about me, about my influences. Let's dig into our topic today. What is positive realism? So positive realism is what Tal Ben-Shahar, the professor from Harvard, called optimalism. Basically, it's a combination between realism, which has to be the basis of everything. And what is realism? It's reality. It's what not only I can see, but what I can know and what could be attested as known. So in terms of COVID-19, this is something that we need to always have in mind. Reality is not only something that I know, but this is also something that has been proven scientifically, that has been attested by some others than me. And positive, of course, it means that in my way of seeing life, I should not immediately focus on the negative. This is a bias that we have in our brain to only see negative in life, to sometimes see it from an intuition point of view, to first see negativity. And positive realism is this: take reality, but in the way to anticipate the future, try to think that there is also a possibility of positivity that could happen. So all this comes from this matrix that I showed you that has been done by the Emotional Intelligence Academy group from Paul Ekman. So this wheel is something that is really symbolizing what is positive realism. It shows you what you can control, what you can influence, and what you cannot control. The problem is, especially for people, I would say, that have a tendency to depression, that they have this notion not to be able to control a lot of things, and sometimes more than what they can control. If you were to think about COVID time, for example, the blue heart of this matrix is what you can control, which is how I feel and think about what's happening. So I can control some of my emotions, my fitness, I can control my body and the way I watch my physical condition. Of course, hand hygiene and social distancing, this is something that you can control, that you can decide to forget or to be extremely cautious with this. Who you choose to spend time with, regarding also the care of trying to protect yourself, and how you invest your time. Of course, if you invest your time on social media, that will be a way to get you anxious. You're sure to increase your level of depression because you increase your level of not controlling. So you will not be on reality, you will be on what we are calling negative realism. This negative realism is created thanks to some voices that will be internal voices that keep on telling you things negative. What you can influence is still something in a way that you can control. If we are taking the COVID again as an example, you could see that you can influence your panic and fear, especially with deep breathing. And it's not you at the Heartfulness Institute that I will teach you how to breathe. This is extremely important in terms of internal way to balance yourself. It doesn't mean that you will control your panic and fear. Panic and fear will always be stronger than you, but you can moderate it thanks to this beautiful tool that is breathing. You can, of course, influence how others are coping, helping them. As a performer, I'm going to give you an example. I love to read plays, okay? And I love to read tales. I love to read books. So what I offer for helping the medical teams who are doing a wonderful job, I offer them once a day to simply plug themselves onto a Zoom, and I was reading out some tales of resilience. I was reading out histories that they can simply listen in order to fuel their energy, okay? And this, I think, was very interesting because they could feel that thanks to fiction, thanks to bibliotherapy, they could have a little more strength. Of course, that was very short because they don't have a lot of time, but sometimes doing bubbles of positive realism could help simply to get stronger at a time where things are difficult. How much you expose yourself to the virus, this is also something you can influence. You can influence the well-being of those around you by engaging compassionate side, and your mood by trying to keep a positive perspective, rest often, reflect, and plan. And what you cannot control, this is realism, this is reality. So what you cannot control is the news, but you can choose to watch virus updates twice a day, okay? And it's recommended no more than 10 minutes. Otherwise, you will begin to be obsessed. You can not control social media, of course, but you can apply limits in order for you not to drown into this social media. You can also not control who you're falling in love with. You cannot control the coronavirus timescale, that's for sure. You cannot control the weather, the economy. This is reality, and we do not want to be in denial of this reality. What we want is to better understand how our brain is functioning in optimalism, which is again, optimism and realism, positive realism, if you want. And how our brain functions, it's very easy. Our brain is divided into 3 brains, in fact. You have the reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain is this instinct brain. This is the primer brain. Whenever you see a threat, you will always have this primitive brain coming up and ask you, what shall I do? And you will always have what we are calling the 3 F's reactions. 3 F's reactions are very easy. One is fight. When you see a threat, immediately your primitive brain is saying, okay, shall I go on and fight? Second possibility of reaction, fly. If you see a threat and the threat is way bigger than you, okay, let's fly away. And the third F is freeze. That's when you are panicking and your body is sending you this message, try to disappear, try not to move, try for the predator not to see yourself by changing color. You know, those animals who are changing colors, for example, in order to hide. Well, this is what the body is reacting when it sees a threat that will be very difficult to handle. 3 F's, fight, fly, freeze. This is the reptilian brain. After the reptilian brain is telling us to do some reflex, you have the limbic brain. The limbic brain is anything dealing with emotion and also with memory. This is something interesting because the memory will play a very big deal in the notion of repairing after a trauma, for example. And then you have the neocortex. The neocortex is everything dealing with rationality, taking decision, the thinking brain, okay? So when you see this brain, you understand that no matter what you're doing, it's always coming 1, 2, 3, always coming reptilian, limbic, neocortex. And sometimes we don't understand, but we react almost in a childish way for emotions. We do not understand how we want to hit the person in front of us. It's because first, reptilian brain response was so strong that it went directly without having the neocortex to our body reaction. So what we're trying to fight, in fact, when we're dealing to the positive realism, it's negative realism. It's what we are calling the poisonous parrots. The poisonous parrot I just mentioned earlier is this negative little voice from morning to end to repeat, you're not good enough, you're useless, you're not made up well, you're not having the proper suit, you're doing a beautiful conference and you didn't find your favorite shirt, it's going to be a disaster. So basically this parrot that you have inside of you is coming to really put yourself down the entire day. This is also what we are calling mental charge. And this is something that women know a lot, because this person has to remember every single block, the family, the children, doing maybe some food, cleaning the house, plus everything dealing with professional. And we see that today men are doing more than what they were doing before, but women are still on charge of having those multiple layers of mental charge, and the negative parrots, I would say, shout louder in a woman's brain than a man's brain. This is what will create what we are calling the fraud syndrome. Fraud syndrome is when you're thinking you're not legitimate for doing something. We're calling also the impostor syndrome. So each time you're doing something and you hear inside, oh, you're not at the level, you're not legitimate enough. This is this negative parrot, the poisonous parrot coming. What you need to do is simply send all the feather away for this negative parrot not to be there anymore. And so we saw that in this matrix, for example, of the COVID that I just explained, you still have the power to control things. It's not a lot of control, but it's still a control that we all have individually. In this control zone, you need to understand that no matter what, you need to define the stress level you have. To define your stress level, you need to look at this little diagram you have in front and try to qualify the zone you are right now. Do you feel hypostimulated, which means that you're very tired? It's the middle of the day today, it has been very hot maybe, so you feel low, okay? So here I put a snowflakes, but I should have put like a little head that is extremely tired, okay? So hypostimulation is really when you feel that your body doesn't have energy. This could be really a sign of depression. If we're talking about burnout, for example, people know they are in burnout because they are hypostimulated. They do not have vital energy to even move an arm. They clearly want to move their body, but they cannot even just move from their bed in the morning because the body is completely hypostimulated. Then you have the reverse. You have the hyperstimulation. Hyperstimulation is when the cardiac beat is here, when you are afraid about everything, when you're very anxious, when you sometimes have even trouble to breathe. This is what we're calling hyperstimulated. For this is also something that you need to be aware of. Usually hyperstimulation and hypostimulation is really linked to hormonal, I would say, health. This is something extremely important to have, because hormones, and we'll talk about it, are really the one to have an effect on our link with happiness, with positivity, with reality. So basically, I would say we are built on to understand our world in a certain way. Ideally, it would be good for you to understand how to be in the positive zone. The zone basically is a good stress level. Stress is not negative. Stress, on the contrary, helps you to live. Stress is the fuel that you have in order to have the right level of energy to wake up in the morning. If you are hypostimulated, it means that you do not have enough stress, and you will need to find a way to have the positive stress coming back. If you're hyperstimulated, it means the stress is too much and you need to come back in the zone. For this, again, breathing exercises will help you a lot, because you have the best tool inside of yourself. If you're hypostimulated, you will have to insist on inhaling. Okay, so basically, if you inhale multiple times, you will see that in fact your body will become warmer and the energy is coming back. Okay, so if you do it 2 or 3 times and having, let's say, some jumps, you will see that you will get back to the zone very easily. This is the contrary. When you're hyperstimulated, you will have to find a way to calm your body down. And for this, also breathing could help, insisting on breathe out. See, I'm doing very small inspiration and insisting on breathe out. If you're doing 2 or 3 breathe out, you will see that because the level of CO2 is coming up, your body will just release. Okay, and so this is very interesting during the day to take 1 minute, not long, 1 minute to simply observe. Am I inhaling more or am I breathing out more? What is longer, the way I'm breathing in, the way I breathe out? Am I doing some interruption of breathing? And all this in order to really trying to understand, okay, am I hypostimulated? Am I hyperstimulated? Again, in terms of positive realism, if you're not aware to calm yourself down to see things clearly, you will not be able to see reality. And again, to find the proper balance between positivity and reality, you need to be in the zone. Let's go on this notion of flow. The flow has been created as a concept by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is a researcher who showed that each, and I was talking about unicity, each of us, we have an area of expertise that is very specific. This area of expertise is not something that we learned at school. It's not out of certificate. It's not out of an external knowledge. It's on the contrary, coming from inside. The flow, in fact, is something very natural that we're doing naturally, but we think that it's not worth it. But when we are doing the flow, when we're doing this activity, time is flying away. We cannot even consider that we are making some time to do the thing. Okay, so what you need to remember from the flow is that every single person has this moment of activity where you feel good. For some people it's swimming, for some other people it's preparing some snacks for the kids. For the third person, it could be doing table, on PowerPoint or on Excel. It's very different. And sometimes we do not realize that this talent, it's not competency. It's really, this strength is extremely valuable, because competencies, when you're using that external knowledge that you learn at school, it requires a lot of energy because it's external. You might be extremely talented because you have learned that so well that now it became second nature, but it's still using a lot of your energy. On the contrary, when you're doing a flow activity, this is in your genes. You're doing something and it puts you energy. It gives you energy back because you are in the zone of doing something that you like without having this notion of burden and looking at the time every second. Okay, so the flow is something interesting for you to discover. What's your flow? What you like to do, and you can do for hours without thinking that this is difficult. If you can identify this, you will see that you will know how to resource yourself. You will get to better know yourself, to put yourself in energy. I spoke to you about hormones. Of course, we can mention thyroid, talking about hypostimulation or hyperstimulation. This is extremely important for you to have that in mind, because if you are mostly, in hyperstimulation or in hypostimulation, you might say something regarding how you are balanced with thyroid. But besides thyroid, we discovered that we have positive realist hormones or happiness hormones. Those are 4 hormones that could be actively secreted. Thyroid is something that we do not have a hand on. This is something completely made out of willingness, out of conscious. But those 4 hormones that really are linked to this notion of how to see reality with a positive outcome, this is something that you can create on yourself. So that's why it's important to know about them. So if I were to talk about dopamine, I'm sure that you know all the dopamine. So basically, dopamine is everything dealing with having goals. Dopamine is also motivation, acceleration, bliss, but dopamine is secreted if you're taking an animal, such like a monkey. We made some experiments that prove that dopamine is secreted when a monkey does not eat a banana, but see a banana. So it means that when you're trying to work on yourself, give yourself goals that are reachable. I'm going to talk to you about professional life. A lot of people think, that they have to set up some objectives for the year. And they're working a lot for, reaching out those objectives. And when it comes out at the end of the year, the interview, you're coming back on those objectives. But for me, because those objectives are not reachable soon, you will not have the same level of dopamine. For example, if you're managing a team or if you're working with others, you will not have the same level of dopamine if you only have one goal a year compared to having multiple goals that are reachable. To have a suppression of dopamine that is, again, this one of the hormone of happiness, try to find very reachable goals in order for either you or your team celebrate together and get this shot of adrenaline that is so important. We have also endorphins. So endorphins, sometimes they are problematic because endorphins is all about also when you want to stimulate them with some artificial paradise or drugs. Here, my recommendation is endorphins is in fact a hormone that is secreted when you have to go through the suffering, when you have through a pain. Okay, so this is exactly what we have when you get to sports. Okay, when you are doing a lot of sports, it will ache at one point, and then after this suffering you are feeling, there will be a sort of liberation. You will go through it, and you will see that in fact you will reach a moment where endorphins will be released, and that it's going to be extremely pleasant. What I mean here is, do not be in denial of suffering. Do not be in denial of pain and difficulty you went through. Here again, I'm talking to professional life, for example. I saw a lot of CEOs that I coach who pretended that COVID never happened. That, we're going to try to have the same objective before and after. No, it's not worth talking about what's not working. Let's focus on how to keep on staying at the same level as of competitions. I'm telling them that if they're not doing a proper storytelling, telling their teams that yes, we went through difficult times, but yes, we will get through it. We will cope with it. It has been difficult, but we can make it. So if you're in denial of things that are not working, you will not be able to release endorphins, whether your endorphins or the endorphins of your teams. Let's go now for the serotonin. So serotonin is everything dealing with social behavior. In fact, serotonin is really something important in terms of recognition. Serotonin is all about having people telling you thank you, having people recognizing your expertise, your title. This is extremely important, and this is why gratitude, benevolence is so important in order to have this secretion. Having the pleasure, for example, to receive a title, to receive a diploma, or to simply have recognition from people. This could be something that will release serotonin, and that will be very pleasant. And I finish with oxytocin. So oxytocin is really all about trust and all about the fact of being well surrounded. So oxytocin is really the bond you have with others. So my recommendation, of course, to have this is to be in touch one another for maximum, recognizing people who take your energy out, and try to also find some pleasure and happiness to stay with people who could be positive, who could be some people who are listening at you, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for you to stay in a very negative approach. That will release oxytocin. So now it's time to have me tell you about a very important tool. This important tool is called Ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept, which means a reason for being. It's also sense of purpose. So Ikigai is really a way for you to find the perfect match between positivity and between reality. Again, as I said, positive realism is not a way to deny reality. On the contrary, it's taking the reality, and when you're observing reality, you're able to see what is not going well, but also what is going well. And do the balance in order for you not to be completely desperate and have, I would say, a mechanical way to only see the negative in things. Ikigai will help you to center upon yourself and get a clarity on your willingness to be and to bring your unicity, your uniqueness to the world. Ikigai is very easy to have. You just need to write something. So I'm going to ask you to take pen and paper. You might find it, I hope, very close to where you are. And if you don't find it, you can use your phone to have this type of exercise. You can also type it, on your computer. You can minimize me and open a doc, and you will be able to answer those 4 questions. Not very long. So first question is, what do you love? What do you love to do? Very easy question, but it's a question that not often we wonder. I remember some people that I had to coach. I was a director of a very important program, and he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean? What do I love?" I said, "What do you love to do?" He said, "I've never wondered. What's the need?" I told him, wait. So answer this question. What do you love to do?
Yeah.
I'll give you 1 minute. Good. You have it? Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So I see that you got it, and we will do a little debrief after. Okay. Second question, easy. What are you good at? And when I say what are you good at, it's not only professionally. What are you good at? It's also what are your talents? Are you naturally a good cook and you like to do it? You're a good cook? Okay, so just put cooking. Are you naturally good at tidying things? Okay, or folding things, or whatever, just painting or running, or you're good at what? What are you good at? Yeah, what are your talents? Naturally. Got it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. No problem. Here is the third question. Ready? So third question is, what can you be paid for? So what can you be paid for is basically what are you paid for if you're employed right now, and try to be as structured as possible. Let's say that I'm paid to do reports. I'm paid to communicate with my teams. I'm paid for doing some webinars. I'm paid to do some Excel table sheets. I'm paid to, go ahead. Good. So I'm not asking the entire job description, of course, but it's very interesting in terms of activity to list what you're paid for. And you'll understand, especially when it comes to what you love. Let's say that if you're paid to do Excel table sheets and you do not like that at all, you will realize that in fact there are some misunderstanding between what you do and what you like to do. And this, in terms of Ikigai, will reveal something. So that's why we're trying to do this with those very simple questions, and you will see it really says something about your being right now. Okay, so I hope you finished the third question. Here is the fourth question. Fourth question is what the world needs from you. So you tell me, oh, that's very snobby. Who am I to give out to the? But I said, what you need to remember is, what do you want people say after, we hope the latest as possible, but after you die? You have the power to make the world better while you're alive. And I know that lots of people are saying, oh, I'm sure you heard this expression before, I love you to death. Well, I don't ask you to love me to death. I ask you for, to live for loving. So that's this idea. It's like, what do you do today for the world be better? And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. For example, if you have kids and you're teaching things, okay, that part is on the green side. That's what the world needs, to have young generation to be educated. If you don't have kids, maybe you are transmitting something. Maybe you are giving some of your time to volunteering. Maybe you are giving out some money for some charities. Maybe you're helping your neighbor. Maybe this compassionate side is extremely important for you. And in my coaching, what I see is that usually, at the very high level of pyramid, people only at 70 begins to say, I really need to think about what will I bring to the world before I'm leaving? Because what could be my contribution beside making some money in my company? And that's why you realize that you have foundation, you have charity. But I really want you to realize that you don't need foundation or you don't need charity on your own to make things differently. By attending and make me the pleasure to be with me right now is something that the world needs, okay? To be all together and trying to make things better, trying to talk about positive realism. So this is something very important. And of course, maybe right now you do not have time to really dig into it, but those tools are for you to look for after, especially to go deeper with them. Okay, so I hope you had the chance to answer those 4 questions. Now, what I want you to see on this diagram is that you see that there are some intersection on different bubbles. So the answer to what you love, when it crosses what you're good at, this is what we're calling passion, okay? When the bubble of what you're good at is crossing the bubble of what you're paid for, this is your profession. But remember that you're not paid for what you love. But if you want to have an ikigai, which is a sense of purpose of being, this should match. The bubble of what you're paid for, if it's crossing what the world needs, this is your vocation. And of course, what the world needs, crossing what you love, is your mission to the world. Okay? So again, I'm not asking you to reveal everything, but it's just for me to have you think that this is extremely important to situate yourself in regard of those very simple 4 questions and try to see what it reveals in terms of this connection. Okay?
A wonderful exercise to discover one's ikigai. And like you said, it's just not 5 minutes or 10 minutes which I can spend and figure out all the answers. It requires a deeper contemplation, I think. And thank you for sharing that with our participants today, especially that specific slide. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you for playing the game with me. I like to finish with this quote that I love of Peter Drucker: the best way to predict your future is to create it. Yeah, it is true that in our times, we are going through difficulty, we are going through uncertainty, but that's why it is time to really take care about ourselves first and then on others. A little bit like when you're taking the plane, you put the mask first, there is a decompression, and then you do it on your child. Sometimes, and I'm sure this is the case of our audience today, sometimes we like so much to give that we want to be always in this type of situation where we want to give when we are giving, and we're not thinking so much about ourselves. So thank you so much for your active listening and for taking the time for yourself to better understand positive realism. And so, of course, now I'm going to be delighted to answer some questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guila Clara, for that amazing webinar, and I was completely blown away. I have a few questions which has come up from the audience today. And one of the question which is most repeated is, how can we handle our emotions? As women, we face a lot of intense emotions. We have these ups and downs throughout the day, sometimes in the week, in the month, and so on. And if you have any tips from your bag of tricks to handle emotions, it would be amazing to listen to it now.
Yeah, with great pleasure. This is an extremely important question, how to handle emotions, especially regarding women. So Freud is talking about 4 emotions, 4 basic emotions, because he said that animals have the same emotions. So that's why it's basic. You have happiness, so, okay, joy. You have anger, you have sadness and fear. Happiness, anger, sadness, and fear. So which one do you think out of those 4 emotions is forbidden to women?
I don't know which is forbidden, but I know which is nice. Happiness is probably nice, so we can have it. But anger, sadness, and what was the other one you said?
Anger, sadness, and fear.
Oh, all of it. I mean, I don't know the answer. I don't know the right answer, but all of it
Well,
is.
Purnima, actually, sadness is allowed for women. A woman who
Oh,
cries is okay. Do you remember in our education when you were saying to a little boy, don't cry, you know, you're like a woman, don't cry. So
oh,
it is very interesting to see that women can cry, whether a man cannot cry, a man who
oh.
cries. Okay, so what is interesting to know is that anger is an emotion that women should not have culturally speaking. Why? Because when a woman is angry, she became hysterical. I'm sure you heard about the word hysterical, and you know that history is coming from Latin, which is uterus. So hysteria is really linked to woman when supposedly a woman is having problem in the stomachs for period and everything. So it's very interesting to see that no matter which emotion you're feeling, when you're angry, if you react as visibly seen angry, you will not be taken seriously. Never. So you need to find another way in order for you to transmit what you want to transmit, which is anger, but another way than simply having this primitive brain, remember the reptilian brain, saying that with a loud voice, with some gestures, because people will say, oh, well, she's hysterical, do not hear. So you will not be taken seriously. So what I saw from a woman point of view is that humor is used a lot. Um, and immediately people will feel that you're not taking things literally. And when you want to have a better management of emotions, I would say, think about a very interesting martial art that is called Systema. Have you heard of Systema before? Systema, Systema. Systema is a Russian martial arts, and it shows you not to be frontal when you have to fight. They always say not to be frontal, but when you arrive, when you see the obstacle arriving, try at the last minute to move and get away. So change your axis. And this is something that we do not do when we are angry, because when we are angry, physiologically speaking, there is a shortener of a tunnel with our way to look, with our vision. We will be shortening our vision and we will only see what is getting us nervous. So whenever you feel angry, you will need to force yourself to take a step back and see how you can disaccess yourself, not to be frontal, but try to really preserve yourself first. Sometimes as women, for example, we want to just say what we have to say because it's like burning inside. Well, when it's like this, try to be isolated and say, excuse me, I would like to stop this conversation, please. I would need to have some time for me and come back to you. And then if you have to shout, if you have to cry, if you have to jump, if you have to say to this terrible person that it's a horrible person, say it, but really try to be outside of a relationship. The problem is that if you're going on the same level, you will destroy the relationship. I know that sometimes you think that the person deserves it, but you will create an unbalanced relationship and the person will try to have revenge over you. That's the problem. And especially when people who are aggressive, if you are aggressive in return, things will get worse. When you have someone aggressive in front of you, and I will stop here my explanations regarding emotions, and I will only talk about anger. I'm sorry, but I think that especially right now, aggressivity is something that you need to deal with. So when you have someone who is aggressive, try to think, what is the need behind anger? The need behind anger is respect, justice. People will become angry if they feel that they have been not respected, that they have not been, treated well, that they have been a victim of injustice. If you feel that in the person, try to address where the person feel that she or he is a victim of injustice, and try to explain that this was not the case, that the person has been treated with the same respect and that you value the relationship. Okay, and so the need of anger is this notion of justice. This is extremely important for you to understand, because if you want to deflate this aggressivity, you will need to press the right button. And I'm just to completely finish on this emotional intelligence point. You need to know that the need of fear is security. So whenever you feel afraid, feel anxious, the need is to develop an internal speech. So replacing your poisonous negative parrot to a positive parrot, and reminding you that you are in security, that the people you love also are in security, that things might be for the good. So really trying to work on this notion of protection whenever you have crisis of anxiety, for example. So again, the need of anger is justice. The need of fear is security. And again, you have to understand emotion linked to a need, like, for example, when you're thirsty. When your body is telling you you're thirsty, you need water. So when your body is showing you anger, it means that it needs justice. Showing you fear, it means it needs security. Same thing for the two others. Sadness is a need of mourning a situation, accepting that something is completely finished and something could be for the good beginning. So the mourning of this is very interesting. And the fourth, of course, joy. Well, joy, even if it's a positive emotion, joy is also, as an emotion, having a need hidden, and this need is the sharing. Okay, sharing with external or internal. It could be a very extrovert sharing or introvert sharing. So those are my little tips for emotional management.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guila Clara. That was very introspective. So with regards to, you spoke about the 4 needs, of course, but it also gives us a pointer to, it also nudges us to think about this aspect of whenever any emotion comes up, there is always this opportunity to pause and go back and assess our own personal needs as to why this specific emotion has come up. I mean, there could be a whole wide range of spectrum other than what you just said. Of course, these are maybe the basic needs of emotions. These are basic emotions, but going one step ahead, I think, you know, it's wonderful. It's quite interesting to think that maybe let's take a pause and assess what is the reason this emotion has come up right now, and that's quite interesting. So I see that, you know, one of the participants of this webinar is also online and would like to ask, if you would like to ask a question. So hi, Shalavit. Thanks for joining us today. And do you have any questions for Dr. Guila Clara?
I think this was a really brilliantly put together and presented talk. I really enjoyed it, and I took a lot for myself. And I guess I would ask a personal question. What do you take for yourself? I really appreciated how you shared, you know, how this is something that every person deals with. And you mentioned your shirt. You know, oh, I didn't find my shirt today, the shirt that I wanted. So yeah, what would be, I don't know, I just kind of usually like to ask a person to, what would be their advice to themselves these days, as they share so many things. What is the one that you like personally these days?
Thank you so much, Shalavit, for this question, and thank you for attending this presentation. You're also a very brilliant researcher, and it's an honor to have you attending this. I'm going to share with you something very personal that happened to me lately. My mother right now has been at the emergency, and she had a surgery, and it was a very difficult time, you know, for me and my sisters. And so what was very interesting was how I tried to apply things, but not, I would say, mechanically, but just from an intuitive point of view. And I realized that, in fact, I was doing this And that was corresponding to something that I would advise a coach to do, but that was, I would say, absorbed. So when it happened, and when I had to see her in the emergency, if I were to listen my negative parrot, my poisonous parrot, I would say, oh, I should have been with her when it happened. I shouldn't have let her go out alone. I should. So basically, I would have done this radio myself, thinking that I'm still the hero of the story. But replacing this, I put myself completely available to my mom. I told myself, this is not about you. This is how you can help. And this has been for me a tremendous shift, psychologically speaking, because it was not as if I was not existing. It was just putting me secondary for being completely available psychologically, physically, and help the best I could. And I think that works. And the positive realism is also about that. It's about having the reality. My mom feeling not well, having this surgery and being in an emergency, but not to be at the level of empathy where I should have cried and say how bad I was, a bad daughter I should have been. It was not about me. It was really about the connection I had with my mom and how I could anticipate any small gestures she could not do because of the pain she had, and being completely available. And I think to have this availability, it means to really shush our negative, radio myself that we are doing naturally to be the most efficient. After all, positive psychology, and I think he would not say the contrary, is really about performance. It's really about self-performing. And I felt that in that time, I've been the best help, I hope, that I could for my mom.
Thank you so much.
With great pleasure. And she's feeling a little better now, and she's slowly recovering. So that's my best goal. So that's why I'm daring to share that with all of you, and especially with you,
I think it's
Shalali.
something that any of us could take for ourselves, especially those of us who are dealing with people who are dealing with COVID. But really, all of us, as we support ourselves and as we support other people, that tendency to think about what did we do wrong, and at that moment of like, wait, it's not about you, just get out of it, it's about what can you do for the other person right now. And so yeah, that's just very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending.
That was Shalavit Simcha Cohen from Harvard University. She's a researcher, and thank you for joining us today, and thank you for asking your very inspiring question. And thank you for sharing your personal experience, Dr. Guila Clara. We wish your mother a very speedy recovery, and I hope she's recovering well, and stay with her, take care of her.
Thank you so much, Purnima. Thank you to all again for your active listening.
So thank you for that response, that answer for the previous question, which I asked about handling our emotions. And I have yet another question about how do we handle changes? Sometimes we say the only permanent thing in the world is change. And, and that's kind of a paradox, but how do we handle changes? It's easy to say, just accept change, but when it comes to the practical reality of it, it's quite tedious. So if you have any.
Well, usually when it comes for change, I'm using a wonderful tool that I'm going to present you. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a magnificent psychoanalyst, and she was assisting people who were in terminal phase, who had to die. Okay, and she made a lot of studies about those elderly people or less elderly. And she created this curve that was going from the shock and the surprise of a doctor saying that you only have 1 or 2 months to live, to the integration of a new balance. And what was very interesting is that she created this curve that in fact today is used for any type of change. So it's not only a question of life or death, is also different phases that you will have to live when you have to accept a change. So you will type Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on the internet and you will see all the work that she has done. But I'm going to like to explain you the different phases very quickly for you to situate yourself today now and understand where you're at in this curve. What is interesting is that everybody has the same phases, even if there is no sense, no directions. It means that you can do 1, 2, 3, 2. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. So what I mean is like you can go and reverse. It's not because you accept a change that you will not come back to the fourth step, which is the let go and the sadness, almost depression. So I will explain you step by step. And I'd love, again, to have you use this tool to situate yourself where you're at in your personal life and try to understand how to anticipate the next phase. So the first phase is the Shogu Surprise. I told you again about this patient realizing that he only or she only has some months to live. So the first is the Shogu Surprise. Same thing with COVID. The first was the shock and surprise to see COVID coming in so hard. Okay. The first reaction to this is the denial and fear. The fear, the denial is basically saying, this is not true. This is not happening here. This is not something that I would like to hear. And we see it with patients, with doctors saying that, why this doctor is telling me this? I'm feeling good. This is stupid. And by saying that, you're trying to push away the anxiety of death. By saying COVID is not coming is also pushing away the anxiety of death. But this curve could be used also for any type of change, let's say corporate change. Let's say that we have to move a site. The company you're working in have to move your office or your entity, and you have to move from another town. Okay, this you will leave all the steps exactly the same. Shock and surprise that you have to move. Denial saying, oh, they won't do anything now. It will take months. They say that it will happen next month. It will take 6 months. And again, this denial is out of fear of change, out of fear of not feeling comfortable in your new office, in the new building, try to have to redo your life there. And then you will feel the anger and the frustration. The anger, frustration is trying to find someone responsible for what happened. So when it was about patients and the doctor, the anger and frustration was about the doctor. Why couldn't he tell me that before? He should have told me to stop smoking, for example, cigarettes before me being so. And it could be sometimes anger and frustration about yourself. I should have stopped cigarettes myself. I should have listened. I should have learned more. With COVID, it was, how come our governments didn't do this? How come we couldn't have masks before? Okay, for move, when you have to move, it's how come these CEOs and the hierarchies imposing that only to our entity? So if you hear it correctly, you also have this notion of victimization, where you have to find someone responsible, and you also, with anger and justice, be feeling like a victim of an injustice. And then you will have the fourth phase, which is the sadness, the depression. You are at the bottom of the swimming pool. The let go, the acceptance. The acceptance thinking that you are completely passive victim of what happened to you. Okay, so this is the let go phase. And it depends on each person how long this letting go phase happen. Could be one day, could be a week, could be months, could be years, whether you have the inner energy to come up. But with this tool, what is good is that it's telling you that you can come up. And if you see, the step 7 is higher than step 1, which means that in fact, your level of resilience, your level of strength go higher. And this you need to always have in mind in order to understand why you're going through this process. Step 5, testing. You're going to try to do new experiments with new modes of operation. For, let's say, for the move, maybe you're going to try to accept the move. You're going to try to find new places for your things on your new office. But maybe you will go back to depression because for you, you completely lost all of the things that you used to know. You don't feel that you are performant again. We'll say same thing with COVID. Maybe you will test the first time that you have to go out with mask and you will not like it. And then you will come back and say, I'm the victim passive of what happened. It's terrible. I should have born earlier. Or... And then 6 is the decision. When you consciously, when it comes to neocortex, when you consciously say, I will change. And what happened before will not happen again. And this decision again could come back to a phase of tests. And if the test is negative, you can go back to let go. The hardest is really going up the road to get to the 7th, which is integrating a new balance. And so again, understanding that change is no matter what, going through different phases is something extremely interesting. What you need to know is that for some people, they have the shock and surprise of a bad news or a news that's forcing the person to change and immediately go to number 3. It could be very interesting to know that this frustration, in fact, is out of a step that is unconsciously having to be done, which is denial and fear. In fact, I'm frustrated because I'm afraid. And I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of not being as performant if I'm going to another office. I'm afraid of COVID because it means that maybe some people that I love can die. So by admitting this, you will get stronger because you will see that it's a natural cycle. It's a natural cycle. And resisting to change is natural in our genes. But going through this curve, get to the 7th step, will make you stronger. And this is what I strongly advise you to always have in mind, to give you more strength.
Thank you so much, Guila Clara. You mentioned that the step 7 was higher than step 1. And that was like, I was completely blown away when you mentioned that as an observation. And change is beautiful. So you mentioned about these happiness hormones, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And I don't know, what was the one more hormone?
Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin.
Yeah, and so on. So dopamine is this neurotransmitter, and a lack of dopamine may get us into depression, and which may lead us into a lack of motivation and so on. So, and it's not in our hand to, how do you change this dopamine level, or maybe how do you create an opportunity? How do you create circumstances, events, situations, or how do you change your internal structure to stay motivated all the time? Or is it even in your hands? And if so, what do you do? How do you do that?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. What I mean is like, for example, for serotonin, if you're working not only in a company, but if you are in a family context, if you want to create serotonin for yourself, and if you want to create serotonin to others, the simple fact of honoring someone. And when I say honoring, it's simply saying thank you, but publicly. It's not only thank you very much, hey, bye, bye. It's really making a little ceremony to honor someone. Serotonin will be released for yourself and for the person who will receive. Okay, so this, for example, is extremely simple. Another thing that is very interesting also, I spoke about goals with dopamines. So I said that it's better to have small goals than just one goal every year. So if you set yourself some reachable goals and you celebrate together, saying that we got there all together, thanks to this person. And again, it doesn't have to be a ceremony, but simply a moment we can be together without the anxiety to be performant. Why? You know that right now, especially I see it with the corporate coaching I'm doing, we are missing terribly because we are distancial. So we are missing moments that are informal moments where people could simply sit one close to the other and discuss without mask and be having a little bit informal relationship. I don't say friendship, but deeper relationship where you can ask, okay, how is your mom, or how is your dad, or how is the family, or how is your passion? So those human links are missing so much. So to replace those human links, it would be ideal to have meetings that could be having a moment where you ask people, how do you feel? How are you? Just simply, how are you? And let the person answer, because I know this, how are you? And then, going to someone else. Just deeply, how are you? How is everything? And say, okay, let's have everybody just sharing thoughts, just having some ideas. And you will see that, in fact, Hormonally speaking, I would say you have secretion of something that will be more at peace and help you in terms of self-esteem. This is what you're trying to achieve. And so again, thinking, how can I rebuild real relationship, even if it has to be through a screen? This is crucial. And that's why icebreakers, for example, for meetings are so important. Moments of informal to celebrate our successes are so important. And we see that, especially with people who are working in corporation and who are very successful, the most successful right now and who are the more resistant in COVID time. These are companies that are giving the chance to their collaborators to have moments of free time working on their personal professional projects. So it's not about not doing anything or sleeping. It's having a moment where you ask people, okay, this is the company, this is the entity we're working on. Do you have a personal project that you think, professionally speaking, could help us? Listen and give a little moment. I know that a lot of people are completely, having a lot of time management issues. But if you are able to give 1 hour on a personal professional project on someone, you will be surprised. You will really be surprised, especially if you're asking the person to present at the next meeting. You will see the level of pride. This is what we need to get, the level of pride coming up, pride to belong, that needs to be, in fact, the key to release those three hormones: dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. For the endorphins, I strongly advise you to work your storytelling. Work your storytelling in order to remind people that you went through difficult times. If you're really denying difficult times, it's going to be pretty impossible to have anything dealing with endorphins. But if you are able to remind difficult times and show how you got stronger, here you will see that it's going to be a very interesting shots, collective shots of endorphins.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guila Clara. So is this the same with motivation? To stay motivated is to do a combination of all of these things, right?
So in fact, motivation, I would say, is the fuel of life, is the level of energy, and really, I think the conscious of the need that you have linked to the world. The world needs you. And when you say that, I know that it looks pretentious, it looks very, but on the contrary, this is true. You need the world, but the world needs you. And you specifically, because only you is able to, and of course you can answer by having the 4 answers you have thanks to the Ikigai. But motivation is extremely linked to this level of energy you have in life by being conscious that what you're doing is something that has a meaning in the world today and tomorrow. If you have that, you will never harm yourself, because if you harm yourself, you will harm the world. And this is something you don't want, especially regarding everybody around you. So motivation is really thinking that my uniqueness to the world is something precious that I need to preserve and I need to offer to the people I love and to my entity and to my professional life also.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guila Clara.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guila Clara Kessous, for this amazing webinar which you just shared with us. Thank you for being patient and answering all our questions. There are still a lot more questions which are coming up from our participants, but maybe I'll, collate them and send an email to you later, and you can answer the email and I can pass it on here. And if you have any more questions to the participants, you are welcome to add them in the comment section, and we'll surely make sure that Dr. Guila Clara sends you her response. This webinar has been very significant, very relevant, especially for today's times when we are all going through so much of anxiety and stress because of the pandemic, and how to stay optimistic and positive in spite of all this, how to look into ourselves, look into the hormones, look into our heart, how to find that balance and harmony and peace from within using all these tools and techniques, and how to intelligently navigate this whole situation and try to find an inner poise, balance, and compass is being really beautifully elucidated by you. We are grateful on behalf of the Heartfulness Institute. Towards the end of this webinar, we'll have a short heartfulness relaxation and meditation session. Stay tuned for the same. We will also be sharing some content and information which will help you continue your heartfulness practice. Be sure to join Daji every Sunday in his heartfulness meditation sessions. So until then, until next time, thank you from all of us and stay on for the heartfulness meditation session.
Sit comfortably and close your eyes very slowly and very gently. Let's begin with the toes. Wiggle your toes. Now, feel them relax. Feel healing energy from the earth move up into your feet and ankles. Then up to your knees, relaxing your lower legs. Now feel the healing energy move up your legs, relaxing them. Relax your thighs. Now, deeply relax your hips, stomach, and waist. Relax your back. From the top to the bottom, your entire back is relaxed. Relax your chest and shoulders. Feel your shoulders simply melting away. Relax your upper arms. Relax each muscle in your forearms. Relax your hands right up to your fingertips. Now relax your neck muscles. Move your awareness up to your face. Relax your jaw, mouth, nose, eyes, earlobes, facial muscles, forehead, all the way to the top of your head. Feel that your whole body is completely relaxed. Scan your system from top to toe, and if there's any part of your body that is still tense, painful, or unwell, spend some more time immersing it in the healing energy of the earth. When you are ready, move your attention to your heart. Rest there for a little while. Feel immersed in the love and light in your heart. Now, suppose that the source of divine light is already present within your heart and that it is attracting you from within. Gently relax into that feeling. If you find your awareness drifting to various thoughts, do not fight them and do not entertain them. Let them be, while simply reminding yourself that you are meditating on the source of divine light in your heart. Allow yourself to become more and more absorbed within. Now, keeping your eyes closed, gently ease out of meditation. Observe and savor the condition that you have just experienced. slowly open your eyes, carrying the condition with you. Meditate in this way as often as you like. You can also slowly extend the period of meditation up to an hour. You will cherish this journey within.
Do you have any closing thoughts, Dr. Guila Clara?
No, I have closing vibes. I'm sending you a lot of positive vibes wherever you are, trying to send that directly to your hearts, being strong, and again, try to use those tools in order to facilitate your life. I know that right now it's difficult times, so I'm really sending you a lot of strength to keep on. I know that you can do it, so really to keep on fighting in the right way and being happy.
Thank you so much.